Hi, I'm Ms. Chris. Today I'll be showing you how to make Kimekomi in honor of Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Kimekomi is a traditional Japanese art that was developed in the 18th century and was believed to have been created by a craftsman that was working at the Kamo Shrine in Kyoto at that time. Kimekomi means to tuck into the groove, which is exactly how these dolls are made. A traditional Kimekomi doll would have been carved out of wood, or in this case is made essentially from pulped wood and sawdust, glued together, molded, and then had grooves carved along where the seams would be. So if you picture any of your clothing where the seaming is to create the shape of your clothes, is the same thing as where the grooves would be placed to create the shapes on a Kimekomi doll. Once the grooves were cut in, fabric would then be draped over the doll, roughly cut into the right size and shape needed. And then the edges would be tucked into the grooves that were created, trimmed all the way down, and then fully tucked in to be hidden. That way you don't see any of the edges in the doll. If necessary, glue made from rice would also be used to fully hold everything in place. So these oni are a much more complicated project and also involve specialized materials. So today I'll be showing you how to make a Kimekomi ball instead. The supplies are just a styrofoam ball and scrap fabric, which are easily purchased in scrap fabric. You can just use whatever you got. So the traditional patterns and designs were ranging anywhere between a simple even division to a more complicated geometric design. A lot of these designs on Kimekomi balls were first used on tamari balls, which I showed you guys how to make last year. If you want to check it out, it's linked below. So those patterns got transferred over, but then there's also Western influences that got incorporated as well. So like there's compass rose instead. And Kimekomi, you can use whatever design pattern you want as long as you can divide it into segments. That way you don't have like a massive complicated shape. You just break it into smaller shapes and go from there. But today I'm just going to show you how to do a simple 8-division Kimekomi. The first step is to see if your styrofoam ball has either a hemisphere equator situation or poles marked. So this one has the hemisphere, so you can just see it. And you're going to mark your starting point. And you're going to take either cloth or I'm using ribbon and line it up with your starting point. And just wrap it around following the equator. And then you're going to mark when you get back to that start point on your ribbon. And I always draw a little line so I know which is the excess ribbon. And then we're going to fold it in half. And put a dot where the center is. And then make that darker because that's hard to see. And then fold it in half again. So I'm going to have my original dot and my mid dot touching. And mark that. So that's a quarter. We have a half over here. We have a half over here, so we're going to fold this as well. Repeat this process until you have divided the ribbon into 8 equal sections. Once you have your divisions, you're going to wrap it around following the equator. And you want to make sure everything lines up. You don't want it shifting. Otherwise, it's going to affect how your divisions are. And then you're going to make a mark and then draw in all the way around where that mark is. So you can have little dimples and then just draw it in your line. And that will divide evenly by 8. And then from the equator, the 4th dot should land on the equator and the dot on the other side. And the beginning and the end overlap. So at the midpoint, so we've already got the 4. So at 2, the quarter, we're going to go here. And 1, 2, here. So we have that little impression. We're going to turn it 90 degrees and line it up again to double check that it works in both directions. And to make sure that everything's even, because the ribbon can shift. So these two impressions don't line up, so we're gonna have to double check that one. But these two did, so that one is correct. So we're gonna mark that one. And we're gonna go in a different direction because we want the center. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Over across. That one lines up correctly still, so that is perfect. That one is lining up. Alright, so that, now that that isn't crooked, that is our center point. So you should have 8 dots along your equator and then your north and south poles. And now you're going to connect the dots. So you're going to line up down here, across the equator, find the matching dot on this side. We're going to go just next to it. And we're going to trace this line. And we're going to repeat that for the other divisions as well. Once you have all of your segments drawn in, you're going to take an X-Acto knife, and starting from the pole, you're just going to cut in and follow these guidelines that you've created. So that way it looks like the segments of an orange, and you want it reasonably deep, but not all the way through, because you do need to be able to tuck the fabric, but you also need it to stay in one piece. Once you've cut in your orange segments, you're now going to cut in your equator. And you're just going to follow that. And I drew it in so it's easier for all of us to see. The next step is adding the fabric. So I'm just going to take a tie, cut a piece of it. That covers where I'm working in this. Not quite twice as much. So we're going to leave that size the way it is. I'm then going to take a toothpick. Find the seam and tuck the fabric in. So there's a lot of leftover, and that's okay because we're going to trim it down. We're going to find that next side and tuck it in along that edge as well. And the third side. It's okay if it looks a little wonky, you're not done yet. So we're going to pull that back out and adjust as we need to. And then we're going to trim this extra fabric. If it looks bulky in one of the corners, you can trim it in a little bit more by lifting the fabric out and then just trimming that. So it's pulled out a little, so we're going to keep our thumb in place and then just fully tuck all these edges into the seams so that they're totally hidden. You're going to do that all the way around. You're going to choose your next color, cut off a piece of it, and then go to the next square or section and repeat. So we're following along that line. We're just tucking it in. And then we're just going to trim all this extra. And you want to get as close as you can when you're trimming. Because the more fabric that you have, the more bulk it has to it. It's going to be a little bit trickier. And then you're just going to tuck it all in, and it's okay because then it has a ragged edge because you're not going to see it. Once you finish adding in all of the fabric, you have the option to leave it plain as is, or you can add ribbon or cord to cover where the seams are. It's entirely up to you. To add the ribbon, you're just going to take it And I like using the hemisphere seam, that way you can cover all of the pins. And just follow around. Trim it so there's some overlap. And then just pop a straight pin straight in there through both layers of the quarter ribbon to hold it in place. And then you're just going to repeat all the way around. Another thing that you can do is also have a little bit of glue in the seams and glue the seams down. I personally like having it covered. It gives it a more finished look. It also hides any of your mistakes, which is always a thing I'm a fan of. And then for the hemisphere, you just choose a spot where it doesn't already have pins to be your starting points. You're just going to go around. And then you are all set.
Support public libraries. Like, share, and subscribe for more great videos.